attend 75 ICAR lecture series, which is a very important series of Indian Council of Agriculture Research. Under this series, the main objective is to commemorate the India's 75 years of independence, which is going to be completed on 15th August 2022. Many activities are being done by various government departments. And one of the important activity which we have been assigned is to arrange 75 lectures just before 15th August 22. In that series, we have very eminent speakers. Today is the 21st number lecture. And before that, we had lectures on various topics. And those topics included the topics of research, the topics of various technologies, the topics of general nature, the motivational lectures, and many others. And in the speakers, you can see we have in the motivational lectures, we had none other than Sri Ravi Shankarji, our MOS, Minister of State, Sri Sarangi ji. We have one of the speakers is sitting today also here. You can see on the environment, we had a very important lecture. Then we had Dr. Bharucha is also present here. And we have lectures of various experts in genomics, in biotechnology, in fisheries, in animal science, on Corona by Dr. Suri. So general lectures also we have arranged. Now in that series, today's lecture is again a very special lecture by a very eminent speaker. We have today Professor P.B. Vara Prasad, who is going to speak on sustainable agriculture intensification for improving food security and climate resilience. He is a distinguished professor and director, Kansas State University, USA, and president of a very prestigious society, that is Crop Science Society of America. Friends, if I read his accomplishments, there are so many accomplishments. He is one of the most eminent scientists, I can say the most prominent scientist across the globe. Dr. Vara Prasad is a university distinguished professor, as I told you, and R.O. Cruz endowed professor in agriculture and director of the Sustainable Intensification Innovation Lab at Kansas State University. He obtained his BS and MS from the Andhra Pradesh Agriculture University and PhD from the University of Reading, UK. His research focuses on understanding response of crops to changing environments, developing best management strategies to improve yields, providing food and nutritional security to smallholder farmers, and improving livelihoods of people. He is passionate about research, education, outreach, and enhancing human and institutional capacity around the world. He has active programs in multiple countries in Asia and Africa. He has published over 300 peer-reviewed journals, articles, and book chapters, trained 160 students and research scholars from 25 countries, and gave more than 100 invited talks in 40 different countries. He received more than $150 million in grant funding and donations. He is an elected fellow of American Society of Agronomy, Crop Science Society of America, and American Association for the Advancement of Science. He serves on the International Commission on Sustainable Agriculture Intensification. He is the current president of the Crop Science Society of America, 2021. Such a elaborate accomplishment, such a renowned person has accepted our request. So Dr. Vara Prasad, I am really thankful to you for accepting our request. And this is really a great contribution by the Indians who are working across the globe to commemorate the 75 years of India's independence. Indian Council of Agriculture Research has tremendous contribution for the cause of the farmers, for the food security, nutritional security, and connecting the persons of your caliber, I think, can further strengthen the linkages with ICAR and can be of immense help. Today in the audience, we have many eminent persons, many vice chancellors, many directors, our former Deputy Director Generals. I see Dr. Gautam, PL Gautam, I see Dr. Rana, Dr. Bharucha, who is by profession a medical doctor, but a great environmentalist. I see many other great persons, but one person, Dr. S.K. Chaudhary, who is the head of Deputy Director General and head of the entire natural resource management in India. He shall be chairing today's session, and I will request Dr. Chaudhary to kindly permit to start this session and chair this session. So, Dr. Chaudhary, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. R.C. Agrawalji. Professor Vara Prasad, you please start your presentation. We will not waste any time here. And straightway your presentation, and thereafter we'll have comments and final remarks. Vara Prasad, please.
Sure. So are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, perfectly all right.
Yes. First of all, greetings. Thank you so much for your kind introduction, Dr. Agrawal.
Dr. Vara Prasad, can you put it in the presentation mode? Again, we see two.
So, are you okay now?
All right. All
yes.
right.
Perfect.
Now perfect.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah. Once again, greetings. Thank you so much for your kind invitation. It is truly my privilege and honor for me to be speaking to all of you through this lecture series leading up to the 75th anniversary of our beloved country and Mother India's independence. As it is rightly named, Azadi ka Amrut Mahotsav. I appreciate ICAR for taking this great initiative to celebrate this occasion. First, I would like to congratulate all ICAR scientists and staff and leaders for their phenomenal contributions to agricultural research, education, and outreach. Your research outputs and products has allowed India to keep up the demands of food, fuel, and fiber of about 1.2 billion people. It is not an easy task. It is a gigantic task. It would not have happened without the innovation and scholarship and dedication of scholars of India. Second, I would like to congratulate the food producers and the farmers of India for working hard and feeding billions of people. This sentiment is best served by chanting the words Annadatta Sukhi Bhava and also Jai Kisan and Jai Bharat. Third, I would like to thank the NIHEP and the IDP program for not only supporting this lecture series, but also providing training opportunities for hundreds of undergraduates, graduates, and early career students from different agricultural universities throughout India and building the capacity of them to conduct excellent research. This will be truly transformational. I had the opportunity to host some students and scholars, and some of those students are already seeing benefits and have joined many top institutions for higher studies. This is currently being done under the leadership of Dr. Agrawal, the DDG Education for ICAR. I wish and thank him also for inviting me to be part of this thoughtful celebration and providing me this platform. I would like to share a few thoughts on agricultural intensification and how it provides a platform for improving food security and climate resilience. My sincere greetings to all the leaders, directors, vice chancellors, administrators, policymakers, scholars, and farmers. I see many familiar names and faces, and many of my friends. Thank you for making time to listen to this lecture. So first in this presentation, I will present you the following: status of the food security, malnutrition, climate change, and a grand challenge. Then I'll speak about the opportunities and importance of plant health for food security and resilience. And I'll give you some selected examples of impacts of abiotic and biotic stresses on productivity. And then we'll talk about systems, concepts, and approaches covering broader One Health, circularity, and end-to-end systems and convergent science. Then I'll talk a little bit about the sustainable agriculture intensification, the approach, the components, and the status of current funding and future needs. And then I'll end with some concluding remarks. First, let's talk about the current status of global food security and malnutrition. As per the World Hunger Map of 2020 published by World Food Programme, globally about 800 million people do not have enough to eat. And most of these people are in Africa and Asia, where about 15 to 30% of the population are food insecure. And if this trend continues, it is projected that the number of hungry people will be about 840 million by 2030. And this is not considering the impact of COVID-19 and other pandemics, which may put additional 20 to 30 million people under the poverty line. There is also a serious problem of stunting in children under the age of 5. Stunting refers to the child who is too short for his or her age. The 3 regions, South Asia, Eastern and Southern Africa, and West and Central Africa are most impacted, where more than 30% of the children under the age of 5 are stunted. From a global perspective, 21.3%, which is about 144 million children, are stunted. Overweight or obesity is also a form of malnutrition, which is on the rise and is of concern around the world. This condition is where a child is too heavy for his or her age. Globally, 5.6%, which is 38 million children under the age of 5, are overweight. The regions of South Asia, Eastern Africa, and Western Africa are the lowest percentages, less than 5, while the other regions and the numbers are greater than 5% and up to 20% in some regions. Now let's talk about climate change and climate variability in terms of recent trends. Climate change refers to the long-term changes in the climate, whereas climate variability refers to year-to-year variability or within the season variability with occurrences of extreme events. The major greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and sulfur hexafluorides, have been increasing rapidly over the several decades. At present, the carbon dioxide concentrations are about 420 ppm, which is the highest so far. Human behavior and demand for growing population is the primary cause of these increased emissions. All these gases are having serious impacts on our current and future climates, particularly as it relates to temperature and rainfall and occurrence of extreme events. Due to rapid increases in greenhouse gases and human demand, almost all the places on the Earth have seen increases in global surface temperatures in the last 50 years. If you look at the globe, in some regions, the temperature change has been more than others, particularly most parts of Northern Hemisphere, including Canada, Europe, Russia, parts of China, most of Africa, northern parts of South America, central parts of Australia, have seen about 1 to 2 degrees Celsius increase, while the rest of the world is in the range of 0.5 to 1 degree Celsius increase. On an average, the global surface temperature in 2020 were about 1.2 degrees Celsius warmer compared to the beginning of last century, as shown on the line graph on the right. Another big challenge to climate change is the year-to-year variability or climate variability, the occurrences of extreme events, which are of more importance and damaging to agriculture and crop production. Just looking at the year 2020, we saw extreme events around the world. Western and central parts of US had one of the warmest years with the record high temperatures. And again, in June and July of 2021, several parts of US and Canada broke records of high temperatures reaching up to 50 degrees Celsius. It has also resulted in loss of life. Clearly, extreme events are occurring more frequently in recent years, which has negative impacts on food production. Last year, 2020, US also recorded the largest number of named storms, about 30. These storms were 5th costliest in the history of US, causing damages of about $50 billion. Last year, most of Western United States experienced severe drought, and it still continues today. The US Drought Monitor map shows the month of May 2021 as one of the highest and exceptional drought intensity in western parts of US. Asia, during the June last year, 1/3 of Bangladesh was flooded, which caused serious damage to crops and agriculture. Now let's look at the future, how the future looks in terms of temperature and precipitation. Most models project that future new climates will not only have higher mean temperatures, but also see more frequent occurrences and probability of hot and extreme hot weather events. These extreme events are much more damaging to agriculture and food production, especially if they occur during the sensitive stages of crop development, which is around flowering and early seed filling for most of the grain crops. If we continue business as usual, by mid-century, most of the world will experience increases in temperature. For precipitation, most regions will experience decreases, while some small portions will receive increased precipitation. However, considering the increased temperatures and evapotranspiration demand will be much higher, leading to lower available soil moisture, causing drought stress to our food crops. Now, considering all that I have said so far, what is the grand challenge with regards to food security, sustainability, and resilience? It is projected that global population will be over 9 billion by 2050. The grand challenge for all of us is how can we provide access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet dietary needs for healthy life at all times. This will require that globally we increase food production by about 56%. And in some developing countries, we will need to double it. We must do this from existing farmland and under the threat of climate change. Most importantly, we'll need to do this by using technologies that are environmentally sustainable, economically viable, and in a socially acceptable ways that are equitable and just. We have highlighted the challenges. Now let's look at the opportunities, especially in terms of yield gaps and food losses and food waste. In terms of crop productivity, we have huge yield gaps as defined by differences between the attainable yield and the actual yield being observed in the farmer's field under specific hydro-agroecological conditions and farm typologies. In many parts of Africa, we are only achieving 30% of the attainable yield due to several biophysical and socioeconomic conditions. Thus, there are opportunities to minimize these yield gaps with innovations in terms of technologies and creating enabling environment in terms of policies. Not only that, we have large losses in terms of food loss and food waste of what we produce. Globally, about 30% of what is produced is either lost before, during, or after harvest during processing and consumption. These account to about 1.3 billion tons of food annually with an economic value of $1 trillion. These were old numbers. Another new report published last month in July 2021 indicates that these number of losses are even larger than those presented here. So if we manage and minimize these losses, we've already achieved half of our goal of increasing food production by 60%. We can all help and contribute to minimize this by not wasting our food on our dinner tables. Now, climate change will have negative impacts on plant health from the perspective of both abiotic stresses and biotic stresses. I'll show some specific examples of different stresses. Before I go into the details, I would like to highlight that considering the importance of plant health for protecting life, the United Nations declared year 2020 as Year of Plant Health. As I mentioned earlier, climate change and human activities have altered our ecosystems, decreased biodiversity, and led to increases in extreme abiotic stresses, heat, cold, drought, and flooding, all of which negatively impacts plant health and yield. Similarly, climate change has serious implications on intensity, virulence, and spread of plant diseases and plant pests, creating new niche areas where these pests and diseases can strive and impact negatively on the plant health. More importantly, international trade and the travel in the last decade has increased, and this has quickly spread pests and diseases from one place to another. This was very obvious from the human pandemic coronavirus disease, the COVID-19, which has resulted in deaths of more than 3.5 million people and continues to negatively impact our life and livelihood of people around the world. Now let's look at this one. Compared to record yields, which uses the best management, best genotype, and the best environment interactions, which is the yield potential, about 66 to 82% is lost due to abiotic stresses. About 5 to 10% is lost through biotic stresses in some major grain crops, which includes maize, wheat, soybean, sorghum, oats, and barley. This means we have huge opportunity to increase yields if we manage our crops well and protect them from abiotic and biotic pests. This slide is a summary of my early career research. Different crop species have different optimum and ceiling temperatures with different response functions. Here are the response curves of season-long temperatures on major cereals and legume crops. I chose to represent the results on harvest index as it captures the impacts of all components and throughout the season. You can clearly see that crops vary in their ceiling temperatures where they fail to produce the grain. Among cereals, wheat is the most sensitive at about 31 degrees Celsius as a ceiling temperature, whereas pearl millet is the most tolerant with 41 degrees Celsius as ceiling temperature. Similarly, among legumes, dry bean was the most sensitive with 32 degrees Celsius as a ceiling, and soybean was the most tolerant with 39 degrees Celsius, and mung bean and cowpeas were even more tolerant with ceiling temperatures of about 42 degrees Celsius. So with climate change, there will be a need to change and adjust the crop selection in the regions based on the environmental conditions. We might have to make some changes there. In addition, our research has shown that even short durations of stress from few hours to as little as few days of extreme high temperature stress can decrease floret fertility compared to control plants, especially if the stress occurs during gametogenesis and anthesis. In these visuals here, zero on the x-axis represents anthesis and flowering, and the negative numbers are before flowering, days before flowering, and positives are days after flowering. You can see that the maximum loss of floret fertility is happening at 2 times. Few days before flowering, that's the time when gametogenesis and the viability of the gametes is being determined. And the second one is during flowering, when the pollen germination, pollen tube, and fertilization occurs. There is some or very limited genetic variability across our current parental lines. We need to systematically screen or evaluate large germplasm collections and wild types to identify tolerance and incorporate the tolerant genes and traits into our current varieties, and to demonstrate that the visual here shows the impacts on sorghum, wheat, peanut, and rice. Now let's look at what is happening or what can happen in the future. Considering the Paris Agreement limits of 1.5 and 2 degrees Celsius warming, Sun et al. Quantified the integrated exposure of heat stress on 3 crops, soybean, maize, and wheat across the world. They found that even at the current conditions, wheat is vulnerable to heat stress in many parts, particularly in India. This is going to become even worse, even if there is a small increases in temperatures. Similar is the case with maize and soybeans. So we are already at the top of our optimum or slightly over the optimum for majority of our food grain crops. So any further increase will cause significant negative changes in the yield. Unless we focus on genetic improvement and agronomic management to minimize the impact of heat stress during the sensitive stages of crop development, there are opportunities for that. Same as the case for heat stress, the most sensitive stages for drought stress is also during the reproductive period, and which are similar to those of heat stress. Drought stress during gametogenesis and flowering decreases grain numbers, whereas during the early grain filling period, it decreases the grain weight. The combination of the decreased grain number and the decreased grain size results in lower yields. So another biggest challenge, in my opinion, with climate change is the issue of water security, and especially water scarcity, which is a serious threat to our global agri-food systems. And one of the indicators related to water security in the Sustainable Development Goals is the level of water stress in our irrigated area. This map here is recently published in 2020. This map shows the extent of hectares of irrigated land area that is exposed to water stress. The color gradient shows the extent. The darker the color, higher the area is impacted by water stress. The thing to notice is the majority of the parts of India is inundated with dark color, showing that water stress is one of the most critical thing. And then India is one of the most vulnerable countries to water stress. This is based on the report which I said was released just a few months ago. This map also shows you the contribution of agricultural sector in various basins around the world. Again, this is based on water consumption, which is withdrawal and the renewal of freshwater resources. Again, the darker color, the greater the stress. In many parts of India, Western Asia, China, parts of North Africa, Southern Africa, and then Southern US and Central America have relatively greater extent of water stress. And this will be a serious issue. Now let's talk about what are the negative impacts on plant health from the biotic stresses perspective. I'll show you examples of desert locust, one example for the pests, and then one example of diseases, coffee rust. This is the example of infestation of locusts in 2020. This outbreak was one of the worst in the 70 years in Eastern Africa, and it has put more than 10 million people at the risk of starvation in the Horn of Africa, which covers Kenya, Ethiopia, and the neighboring countries. This was caused due to unusual weather conditions due to climate change, especially increased precipitation and cyclones in the 2 years before this event, the 2018 and 2019, and the Indian Ocean dipole due to irregular sea surface temperatures in the western and eastern part of Indian Ocean, which increased due to climate change. And again, India also saw a biggest outbreak in the 26 years of this locust last year and continues to be a serious issue. Similarly, from the plant disease stress, I would like to give you an example of coffee rust in Latin America. We are all aware that of the disease triangle, which covers the virulence of the pathogen, environment, and the susceptibility of the host. There has been serious increase in the infestation of coffee rust, which will have negative impacts on the coffee yield, and those coffee lovers around the world will see the impacts on both quality of the coffee and the price of the coffee as well. This disease generally spreads in the temperature range of about 18 to 23 degrees Celsius. And these conditions only existed in the lower altitudes in mid-1990s. But now, due to climate change, the higher altitudes are also seeing these higher temperatures, and disease is spreading and decreasing the yields, impacting the smallholder farmers in those regions. Now, what are the solutions? So to address these complex and wicked problems of hunger, malnutrition, climate change, food waste, food loss, we really need novel approaches and platforms. And due to the complexity of agri-food systems, from production to consumption, we need to be thinking about systems research. Now I will introduce and put forward 3 approaches. The first, a broader One Health concept. And the second is on the circularity in our agri-food systems. And third is sustainable agricultural intensification, which covers almost all the previous 2 items as well. And there were several reports published in the last 2 years from different agencies which emphasize the critical need to focus on using systems and transdisciplinary approaches covering circularity and convergence of science to deal with issues related to sustainability or climate action. Some of the prominent ones are shown in this figure, on this visual. The science breakthroughs from the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine in USA, the science blueprint from 2020 to 2025, and the Agricultural Innovation Agenda from US Department of Agriculture, and also the National Science Foundation Agenda from 2020 to 2030. So this is really recent. They did a wonderful, thorough job, and it is well written. I would encourage you to look at these reports. Now, let's consider the broader One Health platform. I represent as Dr. Agrawal said, I'm currently the president of Crop Science Society of America. But in 2019, all the three societies, the Crop Science Society of America, American Society of Agronomy, the Soil Science Society of America came together to build our strategic plan for the next several years. And to develop this, we came up with a common grand challenge statement for all the three societies together, which reads, drive soil, plant, water, environment system solutions for healthy people on a healthy planet in a rapidly changing climate. To address this, we must all work together and identify a few common frameworks or platforms that can bring all of us together. So I propose to use this broader One Health concept, which can truly bring us together. At present, One Health does not include humans or at present, One Health only includes humans and animals, but it does not include plants and soil. But we all know that for a better human and animal health, all must begin with healthy soils. Healthy soils will lead to healthy plants and ultimately to healthy animals, healthy humans, leading up to healthy ecosystems. And the circularity continues. All of us are interconnected, both in terms of positive and negative outcomes. In this visual, I've shown the positive outcomes in green and a few of the negative outcomes in red, which includes the pollution, pests, diseases, and safety concerns. The positives are nutrients, microbiome, yield, nutrition, and diversity. And COVID-19 has also reiterated the need of broadening the One Health concept to prepare ourselves for any future disease outbreaks from different species. COVID-19 was one example of a disease from an animal species jumping into the human species. There are several others which can spread from species to species or biomes to biomes, including from soil, plants, animals as well. So the second platform is related to circularity with a focus on systems redesign and increasing input resource use efficiency in the entire system from production to consumption. We all know that there are large inefficiencies either due to loss of inputs or poor choices of inputs. We have large nutrient losses, low nutrient efficiencies, low water use efficiency, and more. We've also seen we have huge food losses and food waste up to 30% in both production and consumption, meaning both before harvest and also after harvest. We have a lot of opportunities to improve efficiency by system redesign using principles of 5 R's for water and nutrients, meaning using the right source, right rate, right place, right time, and right manner. To eliminate the losses and waste through recycling, reuse, repurposing, and residue management. I'll show a simplistic visual for carbon, water, nitrogen, and methane in the next slide. So it is a very simplistic version of water and carbon cycle. For water cycle, rainwater can be captured through improved water harvesting techniques in the fields and in watersheds. Similarly, water can be reused. This is particularly from wastewater and urban landscapes and industries. We can also use diversity of plant species from trees, crops, grasses, which can have different above ground structure, and also underground resources can be efficiently utilized from differential root systems. Similarly, use of conservation agriculture principles, minimum tillage, continuous cover, and rotations to minimize the losses, and diversifying our cropping systems to enhance the resilience. Similarly, for irrigation of underground water, we can use the 5 principles again, applying the water from right source, at right rate, at right place, at right time, and in a right manner or method. Similarly, for carbon cycle, focusing on lower emissions, example, minimum tillage or zero tillage, focusing on carbon sequestration through residue incorporation or cover crops, as diversification of our annual and perennials with legumes and cereals, and planting trees, and also focusing on land restoration methods and using climate smart agriculture and regenerative agricultural systems. Again, we should be looking at the entire system or entire farm not on individual components. Similarly, this is a simplistic version of nitrogen and methane. For nitrogen cycle, the emphasis should be again 4R principles and also site-specific nitrogen management and use of slow-release fertilizers. Nano-fertilizers are also available now, and also use of biologicals. And diversification of farming systems can add a tremendous value there. And reuse and recycling of manures, waste, and other sources will also be critical. And also integrated nitrogen management, meaning using both chemical and organic sources of nitrogens as a nutrient sources. From methane emissions from livestock, focusing on, again, low emission technologies, for example, the enteric fermentation for animals, improved diets, modifying the ruminant gut biome, and also improving genetics in breeds, and also taking care of animal health can add value. And similarly, reuse and recycling of manure for crops and biogas production would be will add nice circularity to the system. And better integration of crop livestock systems will be required. For all of these cases, for water, carbon, nitrogen, and methane, we need to focus on the entire life cycle by doing a system analysis, looking at the trade-offs, covering all inputs and outputs. And we must also take a balance the positives and negatives with the focus on zero or negative emissions. And we need to also look at the overall positive return on investment to ensure that farmers adopt these technologies. The last framework, which captures all the items, is sustainable agricultural intensification. I'll provide a little bit more details in what it means, components, current status of research, current status of funding, and future needs to meet the different sustainable development goals. So sustainable ag intensification provides a nice platform to address many of the 17 sustainable development goals developed by United Nations. It also covers the 3 major objectives of the Feed the Future program of the US government's global hunger and food security initiatives. These are inclusive, sustainable agricultural-led economic growth, strengthening resilience among people and systems, and well-nourished populations, especially among women and children. Let me now explain to you what are the different components, what does sustainable intensification means, and what are the different components of those are. Sustainable ag intensification puts emphasis on increasing production and access to food from existing farmland while minimizing negative impacts on environment and natural resources. Focuses on increasing total production per unit area per unit time through system redesign, efficiency, and diversification. In simplistic terms, producing more from less. The fact that the combination of terms sustainable and intensification indicates that desirable outcomes of more food and improved environmental outcomes can be achieved simultaneously, but it will require system approaches, creating enabling conditions, and building social capital and covering both biophysical and social innovations and convergence of sciences. Now, the goal of sustainable intensification, as I said, is to provide safe, nutritious, healthy food at all times to our people from existing farmland without damaging the natural resources. It has multiple components, primarily categorized into three areas. First is genetic intensification, which is on the far right. That is focused on increasing yields, building tolerance to biotic and abiotic stresses, improving nutrition, using both traditional and novel genomics and gene editing tools. The second is focused on agroecological intensification. That is focused on diversification, the farming systems, improved agronomy, resource use efficiency, integrated nutrient, pest, and water management strategies. The third is the socioeconomic intensification, focused on developing markets, policy interventions, understanding the barriers of adoption, building social capital, and creating enabling environment, and also institutional building. And innovations in geospatial, artificial intelligence, mechanization, precision agriculture, research and scaling, engagement of private sector, all are encompassed in that. So basically, it covers interactions of genotypes, environment, management, and social aspects. Again, engaging youth, integration of gender, effective communication skills, data science, and the value of open science will be well articulated and integrated into these processes. So therefore, SAI, Sustainable Ag Intensification, really provides a holistic platform and an approach to address food security, malnutrition, and resilience and climate action. Now let me talk, let's see the time. Let me quickly talk about a little bit on the sustainable, my lab, Sustainable Intensification Innovation Lab. This is funded by the Feed the Future initiative of the USAID. It is one of the largest labs and has a broad portfolio with systems approach. Our funding ceiling is $75 million over 10 years. We started in 2014 and it will continue up until 2024. We have active research and education and outreach programs in multiple countries in Africa and Asia. I'll quickly go through this. So in our lab, as I said, we build a holistic platform to address food and nutritional security. We have multiple initiatives, several multidisciplinary research projects in Africa and Asia, in West Africa and Asia. And then these topics of research were developed through co-creation and co-development with the input from the host country partners. In West Africa, we are focused on crop-livestock interaction, looking at dual-purpose crops of millet, sorghum, and cowpea. In Asia, we are focused on rice fallows, cover crops, commercial home gardens, and perennial wild gardens. Whereas in East Africa, we are focused on cereal legume systems and water management, and also using the principles of conservation agriculture with solar-powered drip irrigation systems and local mulch. In addition, we have 4 different consortiums and 2 centers of excellence. A mechanization consortium, which is focused on mechanization tools, led by University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. A digital tools and geospatial and farming systems consortium, led by Kansas State University. And we also have a policy research consortium led by Rutgers University. And then we collaborate and have a soils consortium established by IFDC and the National Fertilizer Development Center. In addition, we have 2 centers of excellence, one in Cambodia at Royal University of Agriculture, Center of Excellence in Sustainable Agricultural Research, Agriculture Intensification and Nutrition. And the second one is IREACH, Innovation in Research, Education, Advisory and Coordination Hub with CORAF for Services West Africa. We are currently developing and working to develop one for Latin American countries, and starting with Haiti. We will be starting that by end of this year or beginning of 2022. So we bring, as I said, we have a very large collaborative team of network of scholars from around the world. We support about 120 scientists and about 100 different organizations, which represents National Agricultural Research and Extension Service, universities, private sector, and host countries. In addition, it also includes 18 US universities and 7 CGIAR partners. And our partnership continues to grow. We thank all of our partners for their excellent work. I'm going to quickly wrap up in the next 5 minutes. So now let's look at what is the status. Jules Pretty and his team looked at global assessment of some sustainable intensifications innovations. They looked at 7 different typologies: integrated pest management, conservation agriculture, integrated crop biodiversity, pastures and forages, trees, irrigation water, intensive small patches. And it was estimated that 29% of the farms, about 163 million, were practicing some form of SI on 453 million hectares of land. But this is substantial and reaching a tipping point where it can be transformational. These are all biophysical innovations. Similarly, for social innovations from the same typologies, we observed that there was a tremendous increase in the number of social groups across the 6 continents in 55 countries, from about 500,000 groups in 2000 to about 8.5 million in 2020. And these members are in the range of 170 to 255 million, mostly in less developed countries. So combination of both biophysical and social innovations is critical. Lastly, I would like to say a few words about the Commission on Sustainable Ag Intensification. It was established last year, and I'm glad to be part of it. And it is going to address several key issues. I'm not going to go through the different questions, but I would encourage you to go to the website and look at it. I am the chair and the co-chair of small teams which is looking at 3 specific questions. First is, what is the current level of investments in innovations? The second is, what is the investment gaps to meet some of the key SDGs? And third is, what are the principles and metrics we should be using for calling an innovation a sustainable ag intensification? And those reports are available on the website, so please watch out for them. So quickly, to answer the first question, what is the current investment gap? What is the current status of innovation in agriculture? This was done by Dahlberg Asia, and we were only focused on the global south. So our results show that about $50 to $70 billion are being spent annually on innovation in agriculture in the global south. The public sector were the major investors of about $34 to $45 billion, followed by private sector, which was investing about $9 to $8 billion. And India was one of the focus countries here, so I would encourage you to look into more details. But the question was, how much of that innovations was actually going into sustainable agriculture intensification, which was very small, only about 3.5% if we use the strict definition of environment only, and only about 6 to 7% if you include social and human dimensions as well. So these numbers are extremely low and should be increased if you want to meet the SDGs by 2030. Again, as I said, India is one of the focus countries or the case studies, so I would encourage you to look at these reports. And the next question was, what is the innovation gap to meet the hunger and climate goals of SDGs and the Paris Agreement? This report was developed by Mark Rosegrant and his team at IFPRI. They found that the total gap was about $15 billion. So if we invest about $4 billion annually on research and development, the hunger can be decreased below 5%, which is a significant achievement. In addition, this will also benefit about $1.7 trillion each year. It's an economic benefit of that $4 billion investment. If you are able to invest additional $6.5 billion each year by up to 2030, we can meet the greenhouse gas trajectories of Paris Agreement in that range in the 2030. If we are able to invest another $4.5 billion annually, we can address the water issues as well. So then the third question was related to metrics. This is still work in progress. So we found a task force of about 27 people around the world representing different organizations. So these are the tentative principles which we came up with. It's still work in progress. It is being tested. And hopefully by end of the next month, we will be able to finalize these. And we have classified those principles, both outcome-based principles and the process-based principles. So I would request you to look at the website, or I can share the information. So last slide, because as I said, we talked about the water stress, right? And India in particular is very important to address this water stress. So where should we be investing? What type of innovations can allow us to meet some of the needs by 2030, especially related to water security? So there are 3 figures here. And this report was also developed by Mark Rosegrant. And then he gave options for irrigated areas, rainfed areas, and also for both irrigated and rainfed areas together. These are global perspectives, but I'm pretty sure that some of these are valuable for India as well. So for irrigated areas, focus should be on sprinkler irrigation and drip irrigation systems were very good. This is a percentage of crop area which would benefit from those technologies. While for the rainfed areas, under different conditions of low input and different low input, high input, different stress levels, under all the 4 different conditions, drought-tolerant varieties and the water harvesting techniques has the greatest coverage. And when you look at the combination of both for drought, for irrigated and rain-fed conditions, innovations in heat-tolerant varieties, conservation agriculture, precision agriculture, and integrated soil fertility management were the good options in that particular order. So I hope I provided some information there. So to conclude, climate change will have serious impacts on plant health, both abiotic and biotic stresses, leading to loss of natural resources and biodiversity. And sustainable agricultural intensification provides a holistic platform to address some of these global challenges, wicked problems related to food security, nutrition, climate change, and resilience. And again, focus should be on the systems approach. And some of the examples were the broader One Health concept, using circularity with improving systems efficiency, zero waste, and lowering carbon, water, energy footprints. And more importantly, the emphasis should be on both the biophysical aspects and the social innovations. The biophysical innovations will not be successful if there is no social innovations in terms of policies of creating enabling environment and adoption and scaling of those innovations. And then transdisciplinary research and collaboration is critical and needed for the impact and outcomes. Finally, investments in innovations, human resources, building social capital, and institutional capacity is key. And I would like to thank ICAR for developing this NHEP and IDP programs, which has been very successful. This is just one example. Thanks to ICAR for leading these efforts. Then finally, if you would like to know more about our research, please reach out and see our website, and we'll be happy to share any information with you. Again, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. It is a great honor for me to be talking to you on this coming up 75th Indian anniversary. And again, thank you, Jai Hind and Jai Kisan.
Thank you, Dr. Vara Prasad, for your wonderful talk, wonderful lecture. And I believe the people who are participating here, they are greatly benefited with your talk. Dr. Agrawal, shall we take some questions right here?
Yes, I think the one question is by Dr. Ankit Chauhan. And Dr. Vara Prasad, he is asking, India having critically high water stress tracker to irrigated area ratio, what measures can help the nation to meet the water needs for crops and reduce the water stress? I think partly we have covered already this thing.
Yeah, as I said in the last slide, or last before slide, I think there were specific solutions given by macros grant or for irrigated and rainfed areas. And again, focusing on sprinkler irrigation systems, drip irrigation systems, focusing on water harvesting techniques, drought-tolerant varieties, water capturing would be great. And then for both rainfed and irrigated agriculture, focus should be on heat-tolerant varieties so that they can use less water as well. Diversification is going to be the key. And precision agriculture, providing water at the right place, right time, right manner, that will save water, a lot of water resources. So those are just some specific.
Then Vice Chancellor of Kerala Agricultural University, he's raising hand. He wants to ask some questions. So Arpit, yes, can you just unmute?
Dr. Vara Prasad, good morning. Thanks for your wonderful lecture. Just I'm looking at your Muller et al.'s paper in Nature, and that shows the yield gap. Even with the current technologies, the yield gap is more than 80%, especially in South Asia, including India. Yeah. So that shows there is something there that we need to do in transfer of technology, whatever adoption of the existing technologies, varieties. But traditionally, the extension seems to be weak. But so I look forward for your kind of suggestions how to bridge this gap and what investments or research needs to go into this.
Thank you very much for raising that question, sir. As I was saying, that we need to focus on both biophysical innovations and the social innovations. What I mean by social innovations is creating appropriate policies. We are building the social capital, supporting the farmer group organizations, which are more focused on adoption and scaling. And I think I truly believe it's not the lack of innovations. We have tremendous amount of innovations, but if they are not adopted and at a scale where it could have an impact on food and nutritional security. So that's where the biggest area is. And you've seen the commission has clearly identified that although we are investing about $50 to $70 billion, only 3.5 and 7% of that has environmental. And if you look at human and social aspects, it's even less. So we really need to try to refocus these resources, increase that component which is focusing on social innovations, including the digital technologies, the extension services, the advisory services, implementation of policies. So if you're able to do that, this yield gap will be reduced. And I think we all know we have come up with huge technological innovations are there. It's adoption and scaling, which is an issue. That can only be solved by social innovations. So in our research, we need to be collaborating with social scientists, the behavioral scientists, the psychologists, how farmers think. We need to go beyond economics. Because we always think, okay, if you want to do social, let's bring economists. Economists are very important, but there's also more than economics in social science.
Thank you, Dr. Vara Prasad. Now we have one question by Dr. O.P. Yadav. He is our director at Kajri. Sustainability is driven by the policy. Do you find difference between US and India from policy point of view?
Yes, I mean, sustainability has multiple components. I think we shouldn't ignore the people or the citizen science that's related to sustainability. And more now, I think private sector is taking the lead on sustainability. So I think it is driven by policy, but the people are becoming more proactive nowadays. If you look at climate action, people are more involved. Once people are more involved, then the policies we have policies, but implementation of policies is an issue. So we really need to be thinking in that direction. And again, convergence of science and citizen science is going to be important. That's where we need to be better communicators of our science to the citizens so that they can be involved. Once they are involved, the funding will come in, the change will happen. So I think, and in terms of US and India, I think there is more, I would say that implementation of the policies is more well done in US. But relatively speaking, I'm sure there is great policies in India. They're being done, but maybe we need to find novel ways of implementation of those policies.
Thank you, Dr. Prasad. There is another question by Dr. Shivam Trivedi. Should we focus and promote more locally and native grown varieties to reduce the impact of the climate change?
That's a great question. Diversification is the key. To have climate resilience, we really need to be thinking about diversifying our systems. And then the reason why, for example, fall armyworm and all these pests and diseases are coming because of the monoculture system. So obviously we need to diversify our crops. We need to bring back of our more climate resilient crops such as millets and pulses and legumes. There's a whole bunch of them. Yet we are only focused on maize and soybean. I'm talking about US, but I think we are losing our diversified systems. We need to focus on that. And then traditional local varieties have improved tolerance for pests and diseases and also improved tolerance to abiotic stresses. But the major issue there is a yield potential or the response to inputs of irrigation or fertilizer. So we need to make sure there's these genes from the germplasm collections of local varieties are transferred into the improved varieties. Yes, there is a significant place for local and native varieties which are more resilient to climate change.
Thank you, Dr. Vara Prasad. Dr. Nirja Prabhakar, who is the Vice Chancellor at Konda Lakshman Horticulture University in Telangana, a very young university. So she also wants to have some question. So Dr. Nirja, please.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Morning, sir, Asayakar sir, and Kalvi sir, and good evening, Vara Prasad garu. Actually, among the 4 cycles you have studied, like related to the carbon cycle and nitrogen cycle. So in which actually my suggestion is horticulture and forestry, which will play important role, because sole cropping agriculture is comes under leaky system. Whereas forestry and horticulture, it is a closed nutrient recycling system, I think, which plays important role in sustainable agriculture. One thing, so please throw on that light on that. One more thing is related to the nutritional security. Already you have clarified before, just before only. So in which actually horticulture crops plays very important role. So if we'll divert the like a crop diversification, which will not only actually improve the nutritional security, but also reduces the occurrence of different kinds of pests and diseases. And as I said before, related to that, improve the resistance or using the local varieties. So first thing, just throw on like that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, ma'am. Absolutely. Vegetables, horticulture crops are key components for nutrition aspects. And then some of the drip irrigation systems, conservation agriculture, mulching, solar powered irrigation can be done in the vegetables or commercial home gardens. It would be difficult to do it in the field crops. So they play a significant role. And in agroforestry systems, meaning that incorporation of these leguminous trees into our cereal legume systems would be very valuable. Again, these takes care of the above ground efficiency because of different heights, and then also below ground because of the different rooting systems in the depth. And then in our, as I said, in our Asia, we are focusing on commercial home gardens. So it's growing local vegetables in the backyard of in about 10 meter by 10 meter land area, which is enough vegetables to produce for commercial purposes and also meeting the nutritional needs. And again, having diversified diets will help. Access to diversified diets will help with the addressing the nutritional needs. Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Nirja, and thank you, Dr. Vara Prasad. Dr. B.N. Tripathi, he is our Deputy Director General of Animal Science. Again, the head of the entire animal science research in ICAR. So he also wants to have some query. Dr. Tripathi, please.
Yes, please.
So thank you, Dr. Prasad, Dr. Agrawal. You had a very wonderful lecture, and some of the person I could able to see very carefully, especially your One Health. You're dealing with the One Health also, and your that particular slides. Anyway, my not a question, but where do you find India in terms of sustainability? Our practices, our traditional practices have been quite sustainable, right? And climate resilient also. So where do you place India in comparison to other parts of the world, especially USA and Europe, in terms where we really lie, ourselves? Because I feel that we are more near to, quickly adopt sustainable practices than other parts of the world. So how do you agree with that?
Yes, I would certainly agree with that. Compared to several other developed countries or even several Southeast Asia or South Asian countries, India traditionally has been using very sustainable agricultural practices. But I think we need to keep it that way. What I'm worried about is that losing the diversification. India is a very diverse country in all aspects, including the type of crops which can be grown, the number of crops which can be grown in a year. So there's a huge diversity. Let's not lose that diversity. So India is already there. It's just making sure that we are not losing that and moving up to the corn and soybean and catching up with the international market. We should continue to focus on existing diversified system, but where we can play a more important role is the efficiency, improving the efficiency of our inputs, particularly water, the nutrients, and recycling the waste. I think we're already doing, because India is a smallholder farmer country, right? So they all are very carefully use their inputs. So we have opportunities for precision agriculture. We have opportunities to using digital tools to further improve the efficiency of our system, but while keeping the diversity in place. And again, livestock is huge in India, and integrating the livestock with crops is going to be the key, because dairy sector is big. India is one of the largest dairy producing, but we need to focus on forage crops, specified breeding for forages, and then incorporating them into our crop rotation system to cover the both large animals and small animals in that sense. So for One Health concept, I think India could be a leader in that area. And then conservation, tillage is another big issue. So we have lots of room for improvement in terms of minimum tillage, because it's primarily because lack of equipment, mechanization, and lack of appropriate tools to plant in with a large residue. So if we are able to develop that mechanization tools, I think we can enhance the area under no-till or minimum tillage. And that's where the carbon sequestration will come. And those are certain areas where still room for improvement.
Thank you, Dr.
Dr. Prasad, are you aware that how many people say that India has a huge population of livestock, about 536 million? Do you feel that how many livestock are required to replenish the soil in the country?
That's an important.
Because organic matter is decreasing day by day, and the soil health is not good in every part of the world. So, how many animals are required? Please any study about that.
Yes, I have not done this research, but I've read somewhere, and especially in the context of Southeast Asia, if you have 2 cows or two big animals, that should be sufficient to cover about 2 to 5 hectares of land easily.
5 hectares of land.
2 to 5 hectares of land. Man, don't take these numbers directly, but I think I believe that 1 cow per 5 hectares. I'm only talking about supplying of the manure and the minimum tillage. I'm not talking about the dependence of the cow on that acres, because those will vary from what type of cow you have. So, but I'm only talking in terms of the manure component added to the improving the soil fertility of that 3 to 5 hectares of land to 1 to 2 cows, provided you use the minimum tillage as well.
Thank you, Dr. Tripathi Sahab, and thank you, Dr. Vara Prasad. There is one question by Dr. M.N. Jha. Should our major focus shift from crop improvement to NRM, especially in nutrient sector, for achieving the goal of sustainability?
I think we need to focus on both 3. I mean, again, I'm going to re-emphasize that: genotype, environment, management, and social GEMS. All 3 components have to be there. And with 1 or 2, it will not work. So I think traditionally what we have done is we develop a genotype, then develop the management practices, then identify where it would work, and then try to train the farmer to use it. That's totally a wrong approach in my personal opinion. We need to be going backwards. We need to look at what is the typology of the farmers, then look at what is the environment, and then find out what is the best genotype suits that. So we've been going in the wrong direction. That's why the adoption of these improved varieties or agronomy is low, because we're not starting with the farmer. We're starting with the scientists and then going from trying to push the technologies. We need to be focusing on farmers so that they can actually pull the technologies, both from private sector and the public sector as well. But yes, natural resource management is going to be the key. And then we need to make sure that the G by M interactions are properly addressed when they're put in a good environment. And then again, the farmers should have the socio-economic and knowledge capacity to adopt these genotypes, put into management in terms of access to markets, in terms of access to credit, so in terms of social networking, social resilience. So all of those needs to be there. So we need to be focusing on all. It's not that we can only focus on genotype or NRM. It has to be a combination of those. Again, social sciences is going to be the key.
Thank you, Dr. Vara Prasad. One last question we'll take because we have to keep the time also. The question is, considering the high rate of food wastage, are there any GMs possible to maximize food life? This is by Dr. Harshit Pandey. And another observation Dr. Harshit is making is, considering the effects of global warming and other factors, what measures can be taken to get maximum out of the crops in field? And then he's also asking, what are some measures to maximize the yield in Indian subcontinent? So that is the last.
Okay. Yes. So let me think. The first question was related to the food waste and the use of GM crops, right? So GM crops for improving their shelf life. So I think there is a lot of traditional technologies, and because, as I said, 30% of what we produce is lost or wasted. Lost from the farmers in the farmer's field or at the time of harvest. That is primarily an issue of efficiency in the system. We don't need a GM technology for that. If you're able to have the right tools for harvesting, right tools for storage, and then transport, those can be decreased by traditional technologies. And then when it comes to processing and waste in the transport, processing, and on our diner table, it is human behavior. So there is really no need for GM there as well. So the GM technologies is only valuable for the vegetables and fruits where you can extend the shelf life during the transport. So that's the only portion we can minimize the losses. But we have non-GM technologies by cold storage, transportation in the cold storage, we can avoid those. So we really don't need to be focusing on GM technologies for increasing the shelf life. There are other options. There may be specific crops like tomatoes or others where you can do it, but having a good infrastructure of cold storage for storage and transportation will avoid that. And the second question was related to, I was thinking, global warming, right? What type of technologies which we should be doing to manage the global warming or increase high temperature stress. Again, focusing on developing heat-tolerant cereal and legume crops is going to be the key. And again, Mark Rosegan's study clearly emphasized that if you're looking at both irrigation and dry land conditions, developing heat-tolerant varieties has a huge value, especially for grain crops. So that is one option. And again, the second option would be plant health, meaning that efficient management of pests and diseases is also going to be the key issue there. So heat-tolerant varieties, precision farming, and then making sure the plants are healthy to begin with. Because if there are biotic pests already on the plant, then the abiotic stress impacts will be more, and vice versa. And I didn't quite get the third question. You can repeat or tell me that. I try to address it.
The last question you're saying, what are some measures?
They had 3 points, right?
What are measures to maximize the yield in Indian subcontinent?
Yeah, to maximize the yield in Indian subcontinents. That's, I think, proper agronomic technologies, specifically focused on nutrient use efficiency, would be important. Water management, as I said, is going to be key. And sometimes we also forget the simple agronomy, appropriate time of planting, appropriate planting densities. So those would be critical. And again, it depends upon the crop, right? So I'm again coming back to that G by E by M by S interactions. If you're able to manage that, you can overcome some of the yield gaps which are existing.
Thank you, Dr. Vara Prasad, for this excellent lecture and very appropriate response to the questions, queries, remarks of the audience, which is a learned audience, I can say. I just request now Dr. Chaudhary to please give the chairman's remark and to summarize the whole deliberations. Dr. Chaudhary, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vara Prasad, for the nice lecture and followed by a wonderful question answer session. Dr. Vara Prasad, I fully agree the importance of this topic of sustainable agriculture intensification, and that too in context with food security or food nutrition security, and more with respect to climate change and climate change impacts on agriculture. All the paradigms you try to cover, all the aspects you try to cover, and very well elaborated and placed before the audience. The food security and malnutrition is really a global concern now. India cannot be an exception to this. And within this, if I see the food insecure world, and as you rightly pointed out, malnutrition doesn't mean that we are talking only of the stunning maps or stunning population, but also we have to talk about the obesity and also overweight. Overweight, obesity, these are also upcoming challenges for Indian scenario, and it has linked with the One Health concept as well. And you have rightly pointed out, and this is a serious concern and it needs to be taken on priority. There are ways and means to tackle this, and all through your lecture, you try to give different strategies and pointed out different solutions to these. The main crux of your presentation remained the climate change, realities, variabilities, uncertainties. It doesn't limit itself to gases emissions only. And in Indian context, if I see, we find and we are studying in ICAR the climate change impact much beyond the crops, be it horticulture crops or food grains or oilseeds or pulses. But also we are studying the climate change impacts on animal behavior, animal production, their milk production, also on the production of fisheries, whether it's inland or which is marine or capture, or it is cold water or water seas, and poultry and all sectors also. And our observation shows that this is one area which requires huge understanding. Despite of continuous efforts of more than 1 decade now, we still find there are so many things to do and a lot of data is to be collected. It is not only about all evolution of gases and methane, carbon dioxide, and nitrous oxide, and the CF2 and SF2 dynamics only. It is much beyond. The temperature rise, the precipitation changes, all it is affecting Indian agriculture broadly. And in recent past, we have seen a state like Rajasthan, which hardly experiences a rainfall of 200 millimeter or 150 millimeter. In that area, we saw the floods. The ecology, which we say challenge ecology, is further challenged because of these uncertainties. The coastal agriculture of India and also globally, if you see, it is getting affected because of the climate change impacts and its immediate effect on the temperature, both marine water temperature as well as the temperature around the coastal area. The yield gap analysis we are very much concerned about, because in Indian agriculture, we find our researches at ICAR level or university level, we suggest some yield potential. And realized yields, there is a great gap. And Vara Prasad, I would like to tell you that this gap, the difference varies ecology to ecology. In irrigated sector, we have one kind of experience. In rain-fed sector, we have another kind of experience. If rain-fed sector is further complicated with the different extreme events, then situation is altogether different. We know at the harvesting stage of many fruit crops, particularly horticulture, high-value horticulture crops, there is a hailstorm. And that single event of hailstorm washes all the dreams of farmers who are really, the crop is ready for market. At that time, in a couple of days, whole economy changes, everything spoils, it gets spoils. The biotic and abiotic stresses, rightly pointed out, are very, very important. And very recently, what we have experienced, you have correctly shown the map of locust, its migration this year and its total spread across India. We never experienced the locusts in the remote parts of Andhra, remote parts of Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand. There also locusts reached. And this has become a big headache for Indian economy as a whole. And now, because of it is not very easy to control, number one. Secondly, and there are transboundary issues also. So it's very difficult to control such things. And fall armyworm is at another big headache and global challenge in agriculture. The fall armyworm and the climate change, the climate impact on this FAW, it is really a big challenge for Indian agriculture as well. Many times we just keep our voice silence, we speak in very silent words, but it is reality. There are several parts of maize, the cultivation of maize, it is really challenged by this fall armyworm. And many times, to be very frank, we are clueless. All our universities and ICAR, although we say that we have solutions to this, but at the peak time, we really fail there. And this is a reality. Also, the heat stress, particularly in wheat, as you pointed out, the terminal heat is very, very important. And there are great losses. Fortunately, now ICAR and universities, we bred some good varieties now, which are tolerant to heat stresses or terminal heat in the months of March and April. So that really is a big saver for us. And in this area, a lot of work has been done. The water scarcity, some of the questions were there, and I also agree fully that water scarcity is the biggest challenge for Indian agriculture. The dynamics between, the trade-offs between, not dynamics, but trade-off between irrigated versus rain-fed. Now, in the last 5-6 years, we have seen that roughly situation, so 5 to 6 million hectare additional area is brought under irrigation. And this additional area, fortunately, this is under micro irrigation. This is one very good thing has happened. the government of India has a big flagship program in the name of Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. This has really faced on the ground. And the benefits which we are harvested now, roughly 6 million hectare area enhancement is there. Now, total area under micro irrigation has reached very close to 11 million hectare. Out of 50% irrigated area, now 11 million hectare area is irrigated by micro irrigation. This is one very good thing is happening in India. And this is really a good answer to some of the questions our people who raised here. Also, One Health. We are very serious about this One Health concept. My colleague, Dr. B. Tripathi, he has also rightly said that the One Health concept, talk of soil health, animal health. Even I would like to talk it as a water health, because water quality is a big issue in India. In the areas where a lot of groundwater exploitation has happened, now aquifers are exposed to the minerals bearing arsenic, bearing fluoride, bearing boron, and these minerals are coming up on surface, and they are bringing additional problems to the ground. Now, my colleague O.P. Yadav has said some policies. Really, policy is very, very important. If you have strict policy for water extraction, then probably you will not experience such kind of problems. But unfortunately, in some states in India, now electricity, if we make the power free or energy free, people will tend to explore more and more water and more new aquifers. And in that process, they bring additional salts, additional alkalis, additional minerals on surface. And really, we get many, many challenges. Another important hint from your presentation is about the circulatory synergy or circulatory and circulatory convergence. This is very, very important, not for agriculture all alone, but if I see for all the sectors in India, not only agriculture, whether it is rural development, water resources, agriculture, or fertilizers, for all the sector, if circulatory convergence is there, then probably we'll be able to save many resources for Indian economy. And the very recently concept came from the Niti Aayog, the erstwhile Planning Commission. We call it circulatory economy or circular economy, where synergy-based integration of resources is planned right on the ground. And this is how we are trying to go with the concept of sustainable agriculture intensification, which is not only a concept of intensification, but it also takes into account and avoids the negative impacts of intensification on the resources. It's the soil resources or water resources or climate, whatever it is, but without affecting and simply growing more from the less, but without affecting any other resources. And one such example in India is just now the IGP, Agriculture in Integrated Plain. Now, where earlier 4 to 5 ton per hectare cultivation was possible in rice and wheat together, now we have reached up to 11 to 12 tons per hectare production. And here, if you see the rate of soil health deterioration, it is not that much. In recent past, that the health of deterioration has been arrested very significantly and considerably. And this is how we are trying to intensify our agricultural practices, not only in irrigated sector, but also in rain-fed areas of India. And thank you very much. And also your Sustainable Intensification Innovation Labs, a concept from US ad, I appreciate. And we too in India would like to start. We are working already with some of our CG colleagues in this line. And we also eye on such kind of concept so that we can have intensification without disturbing or without deteriorating the natural resources. So from ICAR side and from all, on behalf of all my colleagues, I am really thankful to you for such a wonderful piece of presentation. And now 4, 5, 6 things you have spoken about, and those are very, very important globally as well as for India. So thank you very much for your deliberation and presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chaudhary, for nicely summarizing this important talk on sustainable agriculture intensification. Dr. Vara Prasad, there are a lot of take-homes from your talk. And I think I'm getting a lot of messages. You can see the messages also in the chat box. People are just congratulating you. Your old colleague, Dr. Harsh Nair, has also sent a message for you. So it was really full of information. It was very educative for all the persons. We give access to only key persons in this Zoom platform, and rest of the persons, general audience, they are available on another platform where they cannot be using their video, but they can listen your talk and they can chat with you. And that platform is ICAR 75 lecture series .webconevents.com, where we have all the archives of the past lectures, and we have all other information about this 75 lecture series. So friends, please stay connected with us. And we would like to once again thank Dr. Vara Prasad for, despite the time difference, I know it's a very odd time in the US, but he agreed to deliver this important talk that shows his affection to the country. And the cause for which we are organizing this lecture is really a proud moment for all of us to celebrate the 75 years of India's independence. So whenever I approach any expert, and especially the experts of Indian origin, settled anywhere in the world, they immediately agree for this. And there is a long queue for such lectures. The next lecture, we are going to have the lecture by economic advisor of our country. That is on 19th of August. And there are many other lectures by DVT secretary, DST secretary, and other persons. So please stay connected. And thank you all, and have a good day. And those from outside India, I can say a good evening, good night to each one of you. So thank you for this great attendance. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Vara Prasad. Thank you, Dr. Chaudhary, for chairing this session.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vara Prasad.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. It was nice to see familiar faces. Dr. Chandrababu was there, Jyoti was there, Harsh was there, and I can't see the whole screen, but it was a privilege for me to be here, and thanks for the opportunity.
And our all past directors, I can see a lot of DDGs, a lot of directors, vice chancellors. So thank you, Dr. Prasad, once again.
Yeah.
Namaskar.
Bye.